We are the wind, and soon the rock must go. You cannot hold back the tide.
Move closer every day.
The wind will blow against the stone.
Yes, the stone will soon give way.
The sea will wash against the rock. We move closer every day. The wind will blow against the stone. The stone will soon give way. Paradise in Gazankulu is about as politically overt as I've ever been in an album. Gazankulu is a place in South Africa, a very oppressive place. And like all oppressive places, people must live by their wits to try to get outside of the oppression. In Gazankulu, this place, which speaks of the card dealer, the game is called Find a Finder. It means it's like a 3-card Monte. Find under which card or under which shell sits the stone. This guy says, paradise in Gazankulu is the ability to be able to get outside of Gazankulu. Paradise in Gazankulu is to be able to find those mechanisms and those experiences which will help you escape from this oppressive place. Find the finder, the card is quick. If you catch the black eye, you catch the trick. So make you move, boss, but it could fool you. That's paradise here in Gazankulu. Watch the card, don't watch the hand. It could take you to the promised land. Oh, Siciliana, my shipping queen. She ain't too pretty, but she body neat. Lots of good things that she'll do to you. That's paradise here in Gazankulu. How much you pay, how much it worth? To get up into heaven here on earth. Oh, the bells of Zion tell you to pray. For the life hereafter, they make you pay. But I'm just dealing, not trying to rule you. That's paradise here in Gazankulu. Take a chance and I'll show you how. You can go to glory now. Watch the card, don't watch the hand. And try to catch me if you can. I ain't no touchy, I ain't that mean. My cards are tricky, but my game is clean. How much you pay, how much it worth to get up into heaven here on earth? Good Johnny, ha! On the Shangan Opa Ho, I do the African Robado. Now you see it, now you don't. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you won't. In case you forget, well, here's a reminder. The best game in town is kinda finder. Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down.
Song is something that we communicate to the people who otherwise would not understand.
It's a prayer.
Will you pity the drums when you come back? Will you ring the bells when you come back? Will you pity the drums when you come back? Our lost Africa.
Almost every phase of our struggle had its own kind of song.
Here's the people's music, by the people's culture, and I'll be the one who will climb up the mountain.
Through the music,
Artisan Entertainment invites you to experience the struggle for freedom, the power of music, and the people who gave it a voice.
Children were killed. We wrote songs to say to the children, you are strong, you are beautiful, you belong.
Amandla, a revolution in 4-part harmony.
Every Saturday morning black house cleaning playlist. You know, your Marvin Gayes, your Stevie Wonders, your Supremes, your Jackson 5s, etc. By the 70s, R&B wasn't so much its own thing as it was a catch-all term for all explicitly black music that wasn't just straight up gospel. And even a few explicitly gospel tracks that sold enough records to break into the mainstream charts, like the Edwin Hawkins arrangement of Oh Happy Day. You know what it is. It's that one song that every white person in America knows, or it gets played during the church scene of almost every black movie set during like the 80s or the 90s or whatever, even though there hasn't been an actual black church choir that's sang it for real since like 95.
He taught me how.
Yeah, that one. By the late 80s, with the rise of hip-hop as a viable mainstream commodity, R&B, for better or worse, became much more defined as a genre by taking on much of the aesthetic and sounds of hip-hop music. This is evidenced by the New Jack Swing era and the greatest unibrow this side of Anthony Davis. This was largely because there were literally like 4 people writing and producing every major R&B record of the time. Teddy Riley, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis, Quincy Jones, and L.A. Reid being those people. So that's 5, whatever. Like, I cap you not, if you were conceived anytime between like 86 and 97, it was probably in large part because of any, if not all, of these guys. So I got to thank them for my existence now, don't I? And that's pretty much how R&B as we know it today was born. That is to say, basically just sing-songy hip-hop music, which kind of makes you wonder what on God's great earth Fetty Wap was supposed to be, or what Drake is. Now, while mainstream R&B has pretty much been what I just described since Janet Jackson dropped Control in like 86, I think it was. I don't know, I wasn't born yet. Ask my sister. And arguably today it's just pop music as sang by black folks. Right around the time R&B hip hop had reached critical mass, artists like Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, and my personal favorite, Music Soul Child, and a bunch of other people I don't really have time to name, like ironically enough Babyface, who co-founded LaFace Records with L.A. Reid in the first place, responded with an R&B sound that utilized primarily organic instrumentation and what were, at least at the time, less commercially viable black music genres like jazz, funk, gospel, even rock and electronica, while also incorporating more introspective and conscious, if less bop-worthy themes in their songwriting. This, folks, was the neo soul movement, which sadly reached its peak when Miseducation murked the 99 Grammys and then kind of went out with a faint whisper by 2003-ish. Ironically, right around the time Lauren did, huh? But the legacy of that era still lives on in artists like her, Ari Lennox, and freaking D'Angelo of all people. Talk about back from the dead. And also Frank Ocean, at least during his Channel Orange days. I honestly haven't listened to much of Frank since he got cheap shotted by Chris Brown that one time. But then again, that is Breezy in a nutshell, right? The toughest guy in the room when everyone else is either not paying attention or a woman. Now, the reason I bring that last part up is because, aesthetics aside, there is a defined sonic difference between neo soul and mainstream R&B music. It may be a little difficult to define for the untrained listener, but you know it when you hear it. Kind of like SCOTUS's old definition of obscenity. And then we wonder why Roe got overturned.
It's a difficult one. I think a large amount of it over the decades has sort of been where their marketing has diverged, and therefore the way they've been packaged, the people they appeal to, has differed. The fact that soul, in a lot of ways, you can still see its ancestors, you can still hear its ancestors in a way that sometimes with certain things that are defined as pop R&B, the only thing that might be carrying it is a particular type of beat and a particular type of voice. Soul to me and neo soul has a closer relationship with things like jazz as well. But sometimes there's no difference. I mean, I think, for example, D'Angelo was to have come out now, as much as he is inarguably neo soul, I think his whole vibe, if we were experiencing it now, I think people would call him R&B. So I think some of it, there is an element of nebulousness in terms of what's happening around the person, what's happening around the artist. Like Beyonce and Chloe Bailey are definitely pop as well as R&B, whereas Lauryn Hill ended up popular, but I wouldn't have necessarily have ever put her as pop.
Mary J makes soul, right? And then at that same time, like Faith made soul R&B, and then like, I don't know, Faith made soul, and then Whitney was making R&B pop. You know what I'm saying? Janet was making R&B pop. Even now, like Beyonce's making R&B pop. I don't know who's making soul right now, to be honest with you.
D'Angelo.
Like D'Angelo's still making music? Like, I didn't know. Ain't nobody really out there. You know who's making the best pure R&B, and folks will be mad at me? Freaking Jacquees. Folks been clowning Jacquees for years. You go listen to his music, he ain't got the best vocals, but that's some like pure R&B, get the draws type track. But yeah, like there's an essence to it. You know, I saw my aunties dance to it. You know what I mean? If they played it at the cookout or the family reunion and it hit a nerve with my elders, that's soul. And if it was just like we about to dance and party or whatever, or you know, fun but not hitting that same note, and that was like normal R&B to me. It's a nebulous kind of hard concept to nail down, but I feel like that's it.
Soul for Marvin Gaye has a very poignant emotional tether to blackness and the black experience. When I think of Marvin Gaye, like I'm thinking of what's going on the album, not only what's going on the song, but Flying High, all of that, right? And if I could use that album as a benchmark for soul, then I'm talking about not only the instrumentation and orchestration of it, but just the soul of it. The struggle, the inner turmoil, the encapsulation of what it is to be a black person and black culture. And when I think of R&B, with D'Angelo in this case, I'm thinking of the swagger and the amount of, I hate it because like this is what white people talk about black people when it comes to this, but it just has like this ineffable coolness to it. You know what I mean? Like when you hear D'Angelo, like you hear floating in the dark, like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Right? It's a bop, it's a swagger.
And it takes like a lot of knowledge and time. Like for example, like you know when you mention music being more of a commodity, or soul music and R&B, or just the experiences black people put in music, slowly becoming more of a commodity as those kind of experiences aren't as critical. So for example, I think a lot of music now, especially whether it's R&B, and I can't say for sure neo soul, it doesn't have that like really creative spin to putting black experiences into music. And I say that as of now because as I think of just two songs that stick out to me, one is by Marvin Gaye, and I think the other one is by the Isley Brothers. I can look them up, but there are two songs that when you listen to the lyrics, they're actually talking about like real world issues. You know, it sounds so good that you play it and you don't feel like you're being hit over the head with like something political. Maybe at the time, people thought, okay, why are they coming out with this political music or whatever? Or maybe it was just masked so well.
You gotta give me this collard greens and shit on screen. Zoom in on this shit.
I see. Now, who is the first person that comes to y'all's mind when you think blue-eyed soul? Well, I don't know about any of y'all, but for me, it's Amy Winehouse. And I won't be making any alternative lifestyle jokes, not because I'm anywhere above it, but because, again, monetization, and also because, man, I honestly would feel bad about doing that. But those of y'all too young to remember, Amy was basically the alpha version of Adele. And by alpha, I mean like in game development, not that red pill nonsense that man children like Andrew Tate promote. This isn't exactly what I picture when I think alpha, by the way. Like, cap aside, that was her ceiling. But again, unfortunately, that alternative lifestyle kind of derailed her from ever getting close to that ceiling. And see, it wasn't just Amy's aesthetic that made people call her throwback. I mean, look at her, she's pretty much just brunette Dusty Springfield. But the fact that her sound harkened back to an era when talent mattered just as, if not more to your commercial success, than copious amounts of TNA.
I mean, R&B and soul in general, there is a decently high barrier for entry. You still do have to, in general, be able to sing. But with soul, you have to be more of an artist. So I think that there are, therefore, it's a smaller pool of people to pull from where you can take them and package them as some kind of sex symbol in a way that you can take someone who has a half-decent singing voice, package them as pop R&B, and make them a sex symbol. And I'm not saying this to be disrespectful. It's more just I think that the you can fuck around less with soul. I think that this is also why you see a greater diversity in appearance among soul artists, because it's just impossible to avoid. It's almost like gospel. Again, it's like you cannot overlook the powerhouses, but that powerhouse may not be conventionally attractive.
Like when I think about, I don't know, Tina Marie, Michael McDonald, whoever did the What They Won't Do, we didn't even know he was white till like 2008. Bobby Caldwell. I know that nigga was white.
Adele came onto the scene also. by the sheer mark of her talent, because of course she was a lot heavier when she came onto the scene, and that of course defies a lot of white supremacist European beauty standards. So in many ways, she was already marginalized when she came onto the scene due to her fatness, and she lost weight. And of course, like there's some different ways, and now she's appealing to the beauty standards of white European ideals. So now she's kind of getting like a little bit of a different air to her. Before it was just like she's so talented. She could sing. That girl could sing.
Now, speaking of that sound, remember how I said even to a novice listener there is a sonic difference between contemporary R&B and neo soul? And there, folks, lies my issue with the Blue Eyed Soul designation. Bobby Caldwell, Tina Marie, Joss Stone. I mean, you could even throw in somebody like Nathaniel Ratcliffe. What makes their interpretation of soul music blue-eyed except they're black of melanation again? And why is such a designation even necessary, if it is at all? I mean, it'll be different if we were talking about Bowie's Thin White Duke phase, or Robin Thicke pretending like he had never heard Marvin Gaye being played at one of Paula Patton's family's cookouts. But we're talking about what is by all accounts an honest and soulful interpretation of music that just so happens to have been historically limited to black expression and consumption. Which now brings me to the Jack Harlow conundrum.
I didn't know Dairy Queen had a rap label.
Like, personally, I never got the hype. Like, I really don't understand why so many black girls were chomping at the bit to throw panties at this kid for making a career out of being this scene from Step Brothers, but with God's Plan in place of Ice Ice Baby. Like, cap aside, y'all, if you take all of Drake's S tier, even A+ tier lyrics and remove them from his catalog, and then give him the minuscule amount of authenticity that Drake had before his I'm a pop star phase, and take that away too, that's Jack Harlow. Like, if hip hop had a food pyramid, Harlow would definitely be in the junk tier, which isn't inherently a bad thing. I mean, we all need a few bags of Doritos and packs of Tasty Cakes in our lives from time to time. But Michelle ran a whole freaking 4-year campaign a few years ago against childhood obesity. My point is, in no world should Jack freaking Harlow be considered the face of hip hop, pop, or otherwise. Now, my point with that mini rant is that in a genre as much defined by the authenticity of its artists as their actual artistry, Jack Harlow comes off as one big PR stunt, if I'm gonna be real. Even if that's not a completely fair assessment of him. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice kid, and from what I've heard of him, he's at least a passable lyricist, and he's not nearly as big a cornball as like Logic or Hopsin, for example. But that all just feels like it's by design, if you know what I mean. I mean, he said himself, Drake is his bar, pun definitely intended, from his own mouth, by the way. So according to the guy himself, Drake is Harlow's ceiling, who even at his peak was only begrudgingly embraced by pre-2010s hip-hop heads for no other reason than, one, he did have the mechanics down pretty well, and two, there really wasn't anybody in the sphere who was there to challenge him. My point is, how does Jack Harlow get a pass for quite literally being a whitewashed Drake clone, but we have a whole subgenre reserved for white soul singers just because they're white soul singers?
I think like we like black people, and sometimes to our own detriment, we are extremely infatuated and accepting of white people doing the bare minimum in any type of cultural arena that we are in, and we just eat that shit up. Like, we love that. I don't understand what it is. But it's the same way when it comes to rap. It happens with like if a white person even like tries to, it's changed a little bit recently, but like historically, like we have always been extremely not only embracing but like flattered.
Like, segregation has colored what belongs to whom. You know what I'm saying? That's black. That's black people art. That's black art. You know, this is white art. This art is safe. This style of music is safe for white people. Ooh, you're a white person that wants to do this. Well, can you do it, white boy? You know, like we get in that clap. Let white boy go. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's that like element of how race has created these boundaries around art complicates why things happen the way they do. Over here, at least.
Furthermore, as the question that inspired this video poses, how much, if any, deference should those artists show to the black artists who came?
Hegel is one of the most notoriously difficult but also most fascinating philosophers, and in addition to that, I think that his works have almost a kind of a psychedelic quality to them. I also have to admit I'm not really an expert or specialist on Hegel, but more of a fan, and his thinking has deeply influenced my own take on philosophy. So there are two reasons I'm talking about Hegel today. One, from the perspective of the history of philosophy, Hegel just follows after Kant and develops the Kantian project further. So after Kant, basically you need to do Hegel, but then also importantly, of course, after Hegel comes Marx, and I think you can't really understand Marx without understanding Hegel properly. And that's, by the way, also I think a mistake that people like Jordan Peterson make, who only understand Marx from those who followed after Marx and did all kinds of often weird things with Marx philosophy. But I think from the perspective, at least of intellectual history, it's more solid to see where Marx comes from in order to understand what really constitutes very central elements of Marxist thought. So that's one reason why I want to do Hegel. Another reason is a personal reason. I studied philosophy at the University of Bonn in Germany, and basically at that time, philosophy in Bonn consisted in doing German idealism, Kant, Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, mostly Kant and Hegel. Therefore, Hegel has had a deep and long-standing influence on the development of my own thought, and his philosophy is implicitly contained very much also in the You and Your Profile book and other things, and even if I don't really talk about it, the ideas are often very much central to it. So given that I'm not really an expert, I will not do something like a comprehensive all you need to know about Hegel video, but I'll focus on some selected ideas, some highlights from the Phenomenology of Spirit, which is probably Hegel's most famous work. And the method will be that I'm going to look at some words and passages in the German original, because I think it's important, at least for me, to take a close look at the original text. So we look at the Phenomenology of Spirit, and we start by looking at the title of the book, Phenomenology of Spirit, and the subtitle was that it's supposed to be part one of a system of science. The original title in German is Wissenschaft der Erfahrung des Bewusstseins, so science of the experience of consciousness. This was the first title Hegel had envisioned for the book, but then later changed it to Phenomenology of Spirit. Now, if we look at this original title, Science of the Experience of Consciousness, we see basically three elements that I want to talk about. First is, including the subtitle, that Hegel views this still as a scientific project, as a sort of a Wissenschaft. Secondly, it is a science that is about Bewusstsein, consciousness, or then, as Hegel calls it, spirit. And then thirdly, it is a science of the experience of consciousness or of spirit, and this is what phenomenology refers to. So we're going to look at these three elements: science, consciousness, and experience or phenomenology. Now first, philosophy as a system of science. Hegel is very clearly here following the Kantian approach to philosophy. He also, like Kant, sees a need for philosophy to regain its function as the most foundational sciences of all sciences, as that which provides the most fundamental knowledge for all other knowledge to be built upon. Importantly, just as for Kant, in order for philosophy to be scientific, it has to be systematic. But systematic means something slightly different for Hegel than it meant for Kant. For Hegel, it means, importantly, that philosophy is not just supposed to be, as he calls it, an aggregate of information. It's not just to be a collection of facts or a collection of data or a collection of propositions. Instead, it is supposed to, number one, consist not of data or information, but of concepts, of certain theoretical entities. And then, most importantly, not in the form of a collection, but in the form of an integrated whole, in which somehow all concepts are interrelated, mutually refer to one another, mutually explain one another, and build up an organic whole, which is not only complete, but also, and this is different between Hegel and Kant, also somehow dynamic, somehow even evolving. Second, this philosophical system is first and foremost to be concerned with consciousness, what Kant called reason and what Hegel then calls spirit. Now for Kant, reason is primarily a cognitive concept. Reason is that which makes sense of that which can be known, right? It is that which produces knowledge. And then on the basis of this, not only theoretical knowledge, but also practical knowledge, knowledge about that which is the right thing to do. Hegel's concept of consciousness goes beyond this relatively narrow cognitive approach of consciousness. It goes beyond an epistemological understanding of what could be called a theory of knowledge, and beyond what could be called a moral epistemology as we find it in Kant. It goes beyond the theory of knowledge about knowing what is the case and about knowing what to do. Instead, for Hegel, consciousness has the wider sense of spirit, which includes even like religious connotations, but also in a secular sense that we speak of something like the spirit of the times, which is a very much a Hegelian notion, right? So it refers to something like a state of mind that informs history, that informs how we think and how we act. So in this sense, the notion of spirit points to something that informs society, informs culture, and informs both in a personal, but also importantly in a wider sense, a kind of a mindset of society. So in this sense, a philosophy of the spirit is not just an epistemology, not just a theory of knowledge, but it's an ontology in that it grounds that which is, and it's also a form of existentialism in the sense that it describes, let's say, the state of mind which informs the way in which we exist. Now, third, and importantly, Hegel uses this term phenomenology, and it seems to be clear to me that phenomenology, this notion, indicates a shift in what we could maybe call the appreciation of appearance. In traditional Western philosophy, starting with the Greeks, appearance was basically something that we needed to, especially philosophy, needed to go beyond in order to get to truth. In Kant, of course, we see already a shift in which philosophy no longer tries to go that which is beyond appearance, but it tries to identify that which conditions experience, so what is a priori the case, and basically that which structures appearance. Now for Hegel, appearance is neither something that we have to go beyond, nor something the conditions of which we have to explore, but we deal with appearance right away. Not, however, in an empiricist way, where we are just looking at how we experience that which appears to us, but for Hegel, as I said, appearance takes on a positive meaning. And so let's look at the ambiguity of the German word Erscheinung. On the one hand, Erscheinung, appearance, is still has the meaning of semblance, something that seems to be something, but isn't really that. So that is, so to speak, the negative sense of appearance, something which only appears to be, but actually isn't. But then, and this is what Hegel really points to, is what we could call the positive sense of Erscheinung, appearance, something that comes into being, something that emerges, and then also, of course, passes away later on. This is how Pinkert, the translator of Hegel, translates an expression that Hegel uses, entstehen and vergehen, the emergence and passing away of something. So that is its appearance. Now, the German word Erscheinung has the element of shining in it. These English and German words are similar. So basically, something that comes to shine, something that shines. So instead of going behind appearance, Hegel is trying to find truth in that which, so to speak, shines. So what we see here is a sort of an emancipation of appearance, right? And by understanding appearance no longer primarily as that which merely appears to be something, but rather by understanding Erscheinung, appearance, as that which emerges, and in its emergence, so to speak, begins to shine, the shining spirit. What is a phenomenology of spirit? Phänomenologie des Geistes in German. Importantly, the title is grammatically ambiguous. The spirit is here both the object and the subject of this expression. So the spirit emerges in the world, and the phenomenology is then the investigation of how spirit emerges, appears, shines in the world. But at the same time, the phenomenology of spirit, and this is ambiguity in the German grammar, it is also the subject which studies its own emergence. So a phenomenology of the spirit, or phenomenology of spirit, is both a science of and by the emerging intellect. So spirit studies its own appearance. So the mind emerges, but at the same time, it studies itself, and these are just two moments of the same thing, that the mind, by relating itself to itself, also emerges, evolves, develops, appears. So that is very different from Kant, where, so to speak, reason steps to the side and looks at itself as if it would be standing outside of it, and would thereby basically remain unchanged. It looks at an a priori structure, a structure that as such is not dynamic. For Hegel, and again indicated through the dynamic ambiguity, grammatical ambiguity of the title, this is actually a growth process, a dynamic, almost feedback process, by which the spirit, by analyzing, understanding its own coming into being also comes into being. So it is both the subject and the object of this study, and this dynamic is essentially what the phenomenology of spirit practices. In relation to what we could call basically some form of reversal of the truth-appearance distinction, in which truth is no longer something that lies behind appearance or is prior to appearance, but is in appearance, we also see a kind of a different notion of reality, namely that reality, again, is not something that is in opposition or in contradistinction to the apparent, but is something like an effect of appearance. And for reality, Hegel uses the German word wirklich. Now, the term is sometimes also translated as actual or actuality, Wirklichkeit, as a noun. Now, the word wirklich, the German word wirklich, is, as you can probably hear, etymologically related to the English word work. So that somehow indicates that something is real in as far as it has a certain Wirkung, not only has an effect, that it somehow works, that it is somehow active. So only that which appears can be real. Only then can it somehow be at work, be active. And that which isn't working in appearance, which isn't working through basically coming into being and then shining, has no reality. And interestingly, Hegel also uses frequently the word Arbeit or labor as a metaphor. So the coming into being of spirit, of the mind, of the intellect, and thereby it's becoming real in the sense of being at work, also has the aspect of being some form of labor. Let's now turn to the notion of experience. So again, the original title for the phenomenology of spirit, which means the same thing, was the science of the experience of consciousness. So let's turn to the notion of experience here. Experience, too, in this context, is a very kind of activist notion. And again, we can look at the German usage of the word Erfahrung, which then in English is experience. In English, you have an experience, or you have experiences. So that's basically a passive mode in which experience is experienced, right? You take in something from the outside. And this is also how the term was basically understood in, for instance, British empiricism. Now, in German, you don't have an experience, you make an experience. Man macht eine Erfahrung. So this already indicates an active conception of experience. In order to describe Hegel's analysis of the experience of consciousness as not just a passive intake, but as an active process, I'd like to talk about very briefly in the beginning of the actual first chapter when Hegel talks about consciousness. And here, Hegel talks about what he calls a sinnliche Gewissheit, sense certainty, which for him is the most primitive form of knowing, of knowledge, of consciousness, of the activity of consciousness. And he says, like, the most immediate form of knowledge you can have, let's say maybe as a newborn baby, you experience everything immediately in the form of here and now. So everything that you experience is immediately in the form of sense certainty, here and now. However, in the very next moment, what is here and now, Hegel gives the example of a tree, is replaced in the next moment by something else. You turn around, and then here and now is no longer a tree, but here and now is, let's say, a house. So this shows, and I'm simplifying this analysis by Hegel here, so this shows that sense certainty is not something that is merely a passive intake of that which is right now here, but that, of course, the notions of here and now are equally dependent on me being here and now, and what is here and now is here and now for me and because of me. So again, this shows very much that this experience of consciousness is not merely a passive intake of that which is here and now, but equally, at the same time, also something that I make to be here and now. So at this moment, let's turn to the text and look at one of Hegel's notoriously difficult sentences, but I think we can make sense of them. In paragraph 86 of the Phenomenology of Spirit, following here again Pinkard, Hegel says the following: consciousness knows something, and this object is the essence, that is, the in itself. However, the object is also the in itself for consciousness. As a result, the ambiguity of this truth emerges. We see that consciousness now has two objects. One is the first in itself, and the second is the being for it or this in itself. So let's analyze this sentence here. So consciousness knows something, we know something. And this something that we know, let's say a tree or a house, at first sight seems to be determined as just an object, right? And this objective element is what Hegel calls the in itself. However, we also understand, as we explained in the example with the here and now, that it is something for consciousness. Therefore, we arrive at what Hegel calls here the ambiguity of this truth. We see that on the one hand, there is something that has an objective quality, but we see on the other hand that what has an objective quality, let's say the here and now, the tree that is here and now, has this objective quality for the subject that experiences it. So these are the two simple moments, in itself the objective moment, and the for itself, the subjective moment, that are related to one another.
Auguste Comte is one of the most important and influential, yet surprisingly one of the least read of the great 19th century philosophers. He is generally regarded as the founder of positivism, a scientistic and naturalistic tendency in Western thought, and he also
Okay. Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment is one of the greatest novels ever written. It's a very complex novel. It's long, like the greatest of the Russian novels, and there's an awful lot going on. It's a kind of dark comedy. Like, say, Hard Times by Dickens, it's a criticism of certain mistaken ideas in ethics that have emerged in the period in which it was written. It was published in 1866. And one of the interesting things about it is that it is narrated by an omniscient third person who could well be God. But even if it's not God, whoever it is that's narrating it is not one of the characters in the novel itself. Now, Raskolnikov is derived from a Russian, is the key character, main character here. And Raskol in Russian means something like split or schism or heresy even. The idea is that he's pulled away from the majority. He's broken off. He's a renegade intellectually and also spiritually. He has developed a number of new ideas, which are new to him, but which are in fact part of the intellectual climate of late 19th century Europe. And Dostoevsky is a Slavophile. He thinks that the culture of Western Europe is corrupt, and he thinks that it can only be saved by Russia regaining its roots in true Christianity. Now, Raskolnikov is a poor student. He studies law, and he lives in St. Petersburg. And one of the continuing themes of the novel is that although Russia is the largest country in the world and has virtually an infinite amount of space, Raskolnikov's life in St. Petersburg is claustrophobic. The walls are always moving in on him. There's a sense of being sucked in and constrained, and it's a very dreary account of what lower class life in a major Russian city in the mid 19th century is like. Raskolnikov has written an essay called On Crime, and he's trying out some new ideas that were mostly imported from the West. The most important of these ideas is the idea of the exceptional man. The exceptional man is combined with utilitarianism, and what the result is something like Nietzsche, with a veneer of humanitarian gesture, or a gesture at humanitarian ends.
Understand? All right. Come on. Long, tall Sally, take one.
Gonna tell Aunt Mary Barnacle John. He claimed I'm the miss, but he having a lot of fun, oh baby.
Cut. Come on, Richard. Pat Boone can sing it that slow. Okay? Let's go again. Long, tall Sally, take two.
Gonna tell Aunt Mary Barnacle John.
He says he has the blues, but he has a lot of fun, oh baby. Yes, baby. Woo, baby. Having me some fun tonight.
I can do it fast.
Well, no tall Sally, she's Bill Speech guy. Everything that Uncle John need, oh baby. Yes, baby.
Woo, baby. Having me some fun tonight. Yeah. I saw Uncle John with long, tall Sally. He saw Mary coming and he ducked back in the alley. Oh, baby.
Yes, baby. Woo, baby.
Having me some fun tonight. Yeah.
Well, I saw Uncle John with bald-head Sally.
He saw Mary coming and he ducked back in the alley. Oh, baby.
Yes, baby. Woo, baby.
Having me some fun tonight. Yeah. We're gonna have some fun tonight. tonight.
Have some fun tonight. Woo!
We're gonna have some fun tonight.
Everything's alright.
We're gonna have some fun, gonna have some fun tonight.
Can we do it again a little slower, please? Don't peek, Mama. Don't peek.
Oh my God, Richard.
It's big, it's beautiful, and it is all yours, Mama.
Oh, baby. Richard. Richard is too big. Oh my God. Maybe any colored people live in this neighborhood?
Joe Lewis live right next door, Ma.
Ooh, Joe Lewis. Oh my God. Richard. Richard, baby, look at this.
Well, Ma, you don't like it?
Oh, baby, it's fine. It's fine. I just feel like, I don't know.
Like it's too much house for just you?
Yeah.
What y'all doing here? Bridget brought us back to the
Gather your instruments, pack your flash suits, kiss your girlfriends goodbye, because Little Richard and the Upsetters are going on tour. Going on tour. Whoa! Shut up!
I'm gonna rock it up. I'm gonna rip it up. I'm gonna shake it up. Gonna ball it up. I'm gonna rock it up.
I even says me in concert.
Walk on out onto the sky, but I don't care if I spend my dough. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna be one episode. I'm gonna rock it up. I'm gonna rip it up. I'm gonna shake it up. Gonna ball it up. I'm gonna rock it up and ball tonight.
Man, this changing on the bus is getting tight. What we need to do is go talk to Henry Nash.
Robert, Henry ain't here. Since you are manager now, go tell the white boss man that his darkies won't be changing on the bus no more.
Yes, sir, Mr. Penniman. I'll tell them straight. We'll be using them warm changing rooms.
Oh, you're
No,
right.
but tell them to expect some naked Negroes on the premises.
Oh, that's bad, man. That's bad. Yes, sir. Anything else I should convey? You want the boss man to prepare y'all a little snack? Say some chicken. Barbecue.
Well, if it ain't too much trouble, I prefer champagne.
Champagne. Miss Lucille, no trouble at all. Any other requests?
Yeah, we tired of wearing all this sissy-ass makeup. Richard, I'm sorry. But, I mean, this stuff just don't seem to be bothering you like it's bothering all the rest of us.
Being pretty ain't never bothered me, ain't that right, Lucille?
About the prettiest boy I've ever seen.
Now, sneaking in the back door so the white folks don't see us till we on stage. Eating in a parking lot or some restaurant I wouldn't even pay to eat at the counter at. Now, that bothers me. Being called a sissy? You look at here. Them white kids, they dancing to our music, okay? They may have Pat Boone on the record player in case their parents walk in, but they got my record underneath their pillow. You know this joint we playing here? You know how many colors that played here? None. You know why? Because they can't. I am the first. I am the only. So if you want to call me a sissy, go ahead. Knock yourself out, boy. But you make sure you call me a rich sissy. And you do as I do, you're all gonna be rich sissies too. And where my eyeliner?
Right.
I want to be a rich sissy. Give me that pop up, man.
I like that. Rich sissy.
Now, we want a nice, clean show, Mr. Richard. This is not New York City. This is Greenville. And we have standards and decency here. I'm sure you won't disappoint us.
A good, clean show, you say?
Good, clean entertainment. You see, we don't want anyone getting too excited now.
Ready, set, go, man, go. I got gals that I love, so I'm ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready to rock and roll. Going to the corner, pick up my sweetie pie. She's a rock and roll baby, she's the apple of my eye. I'm ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready to rock and roll. All the flat top cats and our jewelry dolls are headed for the gym to the soccer ball. The joints really jumping, the cats are going wild. The music really set my jeans, great style. I'm ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready to rock and roll. Going to the corner, pick up my sweetie pie. She's a rock and roll baby, she's the apple of my eye. I'm ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready to rock and roll. All the flat top cats and our jewelry dolls are headed for the gym to the soccer ball. The joints are really jumping, the cats are going wild. The music really set my jeans, great style. I'm ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to rock and roll. Gonna kick on my shoes, roll up my faded jeans. Tell me rock and roll, baby, pour on the steam. I shuffle to the left and I shuffle to the right. Gonna rock and roll till the early night. I'm ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready. Ready to tell 'em, ready to rock and roll.
Hey, y'all. Where's Richard? I want to have a party with Richard. Little Richard, I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, baby.
I love you, baby. Baby,
Henry Nash. Hey, come on.
To one another. So this is what Hegel calls the dialectical movement of experience. It means that understanding the objective world is at the same time also a mental effort of the human subject. So an experience, again, is not something that you simply take in, but also something that you actively make. And this is important. By making this experience, the mind develops, the mind grows. It does not stay the same. So let's say, for instance, in the process of a lifetime, you move on from understanding something objectively as water when you're young, and then you become a chemist, and then you understand this is actually not water, it's much better described as H2O with a chemical formula. Now, in this shift of the understanding of the object from, let's say, water to H2O, what at the same time also takes place is a subjective state. You're not the same anymore when you are a scientist. You have undergone a building of consciousness and now, so to speak, have a different mindset and see and experience the world differently. So again, this is just to show that your relation to the objective world, or the relation of the mind to the objective world, brings about also and is a subjective movement, a subjective growth process. And this is what, again, Hegel calls the dialectical movement of experience. So we see knowledge is active, it's alive, it's evolving, it's developing. And this metaphoric of being alive rather than being dead is something that we find throughout the phenomenology of spirit. It's maybe the most important, let's say, metaphor. And again, this is supposed to and does distinguish the Hegelian approach to spirit from the Kantian approach to reason, right? For Kant, reason was basically to be understood as an a priori structure that is not subject to change and development. But for Hegel, this is not the case. Spirit is active, alive, and evolving.
I like your voice. You sound like a voice actor. Thank you. I haven't been hearing doing that, but I push it away, but it's pulling me in. Try to pretend I'm not aware when I do it again. Under the signs, I see the pattern in front of my eyes. Something inside me open and wide, stretching and coming alive. I can't stop it when it starts. Trying not to fall apart. Building up until it all goes dark. In my head, I can feel the getting closer. In my head, breathing heavy on my shoulder. Buried underneath the noises. There's a million little voices.
You see what's happening with Fox right now. And it's great. It's great that Dominion is going to get a little bit of money. Obviously, their business model has been affected by that. But Fox didn't get any comeuppance, you know? They didn't learn a gosh darn thing from that. Frankly, I'm a little bit jealous of Dominion. Daily Show's been exposing Fox for 27 years, and we got diddly. So that sucks. We could use a new green room. You have a lawyer in the audience. You have a lawyer in the audience? See if you can get us just that 0.5. Everybody's wondering, what is that 0.5 for? Maybe it's for The Daily Show. Who knows?
Impactful in so many different facets of American life, an exceptional life. Remember, there's a lot more online, including Gwen and Charlene's full archival interviews with
Good evening, I'm Amina Baz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the NewsHour tonight, President Biden makes his re-election campaign official, betting his accomplishments and vision for the country will negate concerns about his age.
The humanitarian situation in Sudan deteriorates further amid an uneasy ceasefire.
And singer, actor, and activist Billy Porter on his return to music and on becoming unapologetically himself.
You know, art creates critical thinkers. And critical thinkers are leaders, not followers.